Hi, Misha here, and I felt like revisiting the Battlestar Valkyrie. This was recently released by Eaglemoss, and I did a initial review, preview, what have you video. And I just felt like looking at it again and putting it in perspective with the Galactica and the Pegasus. Why not? Just for fun. Plus, it's with the new camera, so yeah, maybe it'll be enjoyable. And the models here, Galactica is part of BS 75. Pegasus is part of the battle group BS 62. And Valkyrie, at least in the show, is part of BS 41. These are battle groups typically led by a battlestar, which in universe is a combination carrier and battleship. However, the Valkyrie is more of a combination of escort carrier and heavy cruiser, or maybe a carrier like the British use or used with the Harriers, because it is a much smaller craft, with Pegasus being the largest of these. Galactica here, and this is just, best estimate size-wise, is about 4,740 feet. Pegasus is quite a bit larger, at over 5,870 feet. But Valkyrie is quite a bit smaller scale. She's about 2,130 feet. Still very big compared to like a modern naval vessel, but in this scale, small. Galactica is the oldest type here. We never actually know her class, although some say it's Jupiter. These were in service early on during the Cylon War. Pegasus actually never served in the First War. This is a Mercury-class battlestar introduced after. And Valkyrie, some call it a Valkyrie class, others refer to it as an Odin class, was introduced middle or towards the end of the First Cylon War. So again, it's right in the middle as far as kind of modernity. It's a much older ship, more basic than a Pegasus, but is more advanced than a Galactica in certain ways, like, for example, having fixed flight pods. Crew-wise, the Galactica, during the First Cylon War, had a max crew of up to 5,000, although by the time of the Second War, or really fall, she had a crew of more like 3,000, 3,500. Part of it was automation, part of it was she had had some of her armament removed and stuff for peacetime. Pegasus actually had a crew of between 1,750 and 2,500. Even though she's a much larger ship, her crew is smaller thanks to automation and more computers and just self-operating systems. Valkyrie is definitely the smallest of these. She has a crew of between 1,200 and 1,750, depending on configuration. All three of these can carry Raptors and Vipers. Never really get a feeling for how many Vipers that Galactica carried, but it would have been... I know the original Galactica from the original series carried 75 standard, but could carry up to 150, so maybe it's the same. Pegasus over here carried 160 standard with 40 in reserve, so 200 total Vipers. and could manufacture more. But the Valkyrie was a much smaller craft, and so she only had 20 to 40 Vipers. And the only one I know about Raptors, it said that Pegasus carried 50. So with that in mind, it's possible Galactic carried 20 or 30, and Valkyrie probably just had half a dozen, maybe 10 at most. And of course, all were FTL capable. And with that, let's focus more on Valkyrie herself. Like I said, this class, including Valkyrie, were in service at least towards the end of the First Cylon War, and were very much in service during the Second War. In fact, it could be said that these made up the bulk of the Colonial fleet. Ships like Galactica were big and impressive, but also dated and probably costly to run in both manpower and resources, whereas ships like Pegasus were expensive to build and time-consuming. But the Valkyrie class, fit right in the middle. They could produce these quite quickly, comparatively speaking. They weren't as demanding on manpower, yet they were still very capable. In fact, they had more weapons per square foot than the other Battlestars, even if these were of smaller caliber. They had 20 basically guns, kinetic weapons, and then they had 33 dual purpose mounts that could either fire guns, shells, or small missiles. And they had 6 main missile batteries. The Galactica type had 24 main guns, although they were of a bigger caliber, and numerous point defense and smaller caliber guns, plus 12 main missile batteries. And Pegasus had 34 main guns, 12 main missile batteries, and basically countless smaller batteries. Interestingly, while the other two rely more on cannon, the Valkyrie type seems to be more of a missile cruiser or ship, whatever you'd like to call it. Missile boat, why not? And her flight pods were arranged. She had tubes, but they were arranged rather differently too. And so, as I was saying before my battery died, yeah, she was more of a missile boat than the others, which has pros and cons. But it kind of also shows her as more of a cruiser than a carrier, because she had a limited number of Vipers and Raptors. But on the other hand, if she had missiles, it did give her long range and what have you. And what was neat about the Eaglemoss doing this in the collection, of course they were going to do the original Galactica and the reimagined, and they pretty much had to do Pegasus too. But this was never really a major hero ship, yet it was seen a lot. It was seen in the episode Season 3 with Novacek, Mad Dog, where it was Adama's earlier command before Galactica. And we see it during the fall of the colonies. Valkyrie herself, plus 2 sister ships, are defending Caprica. Well, trying to, not very successfully, and are lost. We also see a couple of these at the Scorpion shipyards when Pegasus makes her jump out. They're presumably lost when they go up in nukes. And we see these in Blood and Chrome as part of the Ghost Fleet. So they pop up a lot. It's a good support ship. I guess if you wanted to give an analogy, this is like the Miranda or the Excelsior class of the Battlestar Galactica universe. And this being an escort-alike carrier makes a lot of sense. Like I said, it is much better suited for peacetime operations, patrol, reconnaissance, maybe more police actions, because a ship like this is going to be much less expensive to operate than either of the other ones. Yet it's not so small that it has limited range and capability. It's fully FTL capable, and it is bristling with missiles and guns. One interesting feature of this model in this ship is that its FTL drive is exposed on the underside, not kind of recessed in the system as on the other ships. And she's very spiky. She has lots of protrusions. She has 4 main sublight engines, whereas Galactica has 6. And Pegasus has 8 sublight, which makes sense for her larger mass. Of course, Pegasus has quite a bit more Viper and flight deck facilities available than Galactica or Valkyrie. But as far as we know, none of these survived the fall of the colonies, but there were many in service. Actually, it would have been neat if they'd maybe found one, or like a wrecked one, or something. I think a lot of people like the look of this model, because it's unique. I mean, it follows the basic lines of a Battlestar. But when they were doing the Galactica and the Pegasus, they had to kind of give homage to the original and follow the original lines. In a way, Pegasus looks more like the original Galactica than they're reimagined, and I think that's okay, because when you're reimagining, you need to make your own identity. By the way, this is, of course, the one from the series. I think a lot of people have asked if they'll do like a Blood and Chrome, a wartime Galactica in the collection. I think that'd be pretty neat. One with more armor and guns. But yeah, when they did the Valkyrie, they could just kind of design however they felt like, and since it wasn't ever going to be a major hero ship, there just wasn't the pressure. So it looks like it fits in the fleet, but it has a very skeletal, very utilitarian design. Internally, it's much more cramped. It's not like the Galactica is the Hilton or the Ritz inside, but the Valkyrie is even more sparse and cramped and tubular and whatnot. Now, Pegasus inside is pretty refined, at least compared to the other two. But this was definitely one I was super excited. I was really hoping they would do it, but I wasn't sure because they were just starting to branch out from the core ships. And this was one of the first, along with the Blood and Chrome ships, which I'm really glad they did the Viper Mark III and the Raider. Hope they do the transitional base star. As I've said in other videos, I would like to see the civilian fleet, but I don't think they'll do it, but I think it'd be neat if they did them in packs, kind of like the shuttle packs that they did for Star Trek. There's 4 or 5, and they're of a smaller scale. Because if you had, little civilian ships that were 3-4 inches long, and you set them next to Galactica, it would give the right perspective. I mean, you're never going to get these in scale. I mean, you just won't. These are two massive ships, and no one even knows the scale for sure, how big they are. But I mean, if you made Valkyrie to scale with Pegasus over here, I mean, she would be about a third the length, so about as big as the head. And that wouldn't be giving her justice. On the other hand, if you kept Valkyrie at this size and made Pegasus to scale, it would be about as wide as my table, which might sound cool until you try to put them on the shelf. So they just have to pretty much make them to a certain size. I think they said their target for this collection is 8 to 11 inches, which makes sense. Most shelves out there are between 8 and a foot deep. It is what it is. And I do like scale models. I mean, with my ships and planes, they're all scale, but for fantasy stuff, for fiction, for sci-fi, it's okay just to kind of produce them. But yeah, there's still not many videos out on the Valkyrie, and mine was a while back, so why not revisit? I think everyone kind of agrees that, as far as I know, that this is a really well done model. Even though it's very thin, it has decent weight to it. Maybe not as heavy as Pegasus. But honestly, the Galactica is maybe the lightest just because it has a lot of polymer and it's early on. The heaviest Battlestar is probably the TOS one. But yeah, lots of guns. And that's about all we know about it. So what do you think? What's your favorite one? And are there any other Battlestars you can think of they should do? Like I said, they could do the armored Galactica. I think that's about the only ones we ever saw for sure. But yeah, let me know. Appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to comment below. And as always, this is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon. Next time. It's more of a confused battleship / carrier. In other words, it's like a Japanese ship, and we know how well those worked out. So yeah, let's compare it with the Colonial.